So how did you find out that you were not going to be on the team then?
Yeah. So, I mean, part of the thing was, on this team. So the first year when I was on this team, this is that 96, 97 year when they were coming back on the most number of wins in NBA history. They had Luke Longley in the first position. They had Bill Wennington in the second position. And then they had picked up Robert Parrish, who was a great guy. I loved playing with Robert. He was tremendous. He was a real coach. He really worked with guys. But that being said, they have 3 veteran NBA players already on the floor without me. So unless I filled a particular need, such as making Dennis work hard in practice, they don't need me, right? And so that sort of handwriting was on the wall. I kind of knew that first year that was coming. And they sort of let me know that, they were going to try to work with me to send me to Europe, much like they had planned to do with Travis Knight anyway. So it wasn't a real surprise for me. I had the luxury of not only knowing that it was coming, but also knowing that they were going to take steps to try to take care of me and to make sure that I was going to continue learning. I remember there was the last game that we played. It was me, there was Corey Beck, and there was Matt Stiganga from Michigan that were still on the team. And I think I'm not sure if it was the ABC game, I don't remember, but it was like the Sunday game that's on national television. And they had the 3 of us, and they were interviewing us about our odds to make the team. And, the first 2 guys were very politic about it. And they said, I think I've showed this, the coaching staff that my skills and that I'm certainly a benefit and this and that. And when they asked me, I said that the days have become hours, but it's been fun. I don't think they used that clip. But, it's just because I knew it. So anyway, what happened was the last practice day, everyone knows it's the last cut day, where they either have to vest your contract for a 10-day or for the season. Came, and then they ask you to go see the coaches after practice. And all of us were cut. I remember I walked in with, it was Phil Jackson, Jerry Krause, and some of the assistants were there. And they were very positive. They said, listen, we're going to send you to Europe. We're going to arrange something. We're going to keep an eye on you. And we're going to work with you. And then this summer, we'll try to work with you some more. And then you can come back with us. And that's what they said. And I thought that was fantastic. I really thought that was a real opportunity for me. So that was my plan, walking out the door.
That's good of them to, for them to set something up like that. They don't have to do that.
No.
Definitely not. So that's kudos to them. I'm surprised that they would even do something like that.
Yeah. I don't know if that's something common. Certainly not my experience. I haven't found anybody else who had done something like that or go on that kind of path. But they did. They were very honest with me from the beginning. And I was very honest with them. It was a good opportunity. And so, they sort of knew, and I knew that it wasn't going to happen that year for sure. And so it worked out. What happened was I initially went to the CBA, which they arranged. So that's the Rockford, Illinois, has had, right, when the CBA was still around, had a team there, and I don't know, it's got to be like an hour or 2 outside of Chicago. And I played there for the preseason. That they're basically, at that time, what happened was at the end of the NBA preseason is the beginning of the CBA preseason. So that way it just sort of flows. And so I was in camp with a lot of guys who had gotten cut from various teams to play in Rockford. But that being said, I already knew from Jerry Krause, he'd said, like, listen, you're going to go to Rockford, because I want you to stay in shape and because I want you to keep working out and I want you to learn everything you can, but you're not going to stay in Rockford. You're going to go to Europe. You're going to play against big players overseas. And so that's what they had said. So I went to Rockford and I played there for a few weeks. Stayed in a very 2-star hotel with another guy. It wasn't a lot of fun, but at that time, then I got the call from Jerry Krause. He said that he had arranged for me to play with Maccabi Tel Aviv, which is the top team in Israel and one of the top teams in Europe. So that was just fantastic, and that I was going to get my citizenship as well, so that I could play as an Israeli, which is not so. Basically, how it works in overseas is you're only limited to a certain number of U.S. citizens. So U.S. players at that time dominated the market. So many European teams limited the number of players that could play, but you could have as many national players as to fill out your roster. So I didn't play as a U.S. citizen. I played as an Israeli citizen. So that was a real benefit to me, and the team was able to pick up a second 7-footer. They already had a 7-footer, Konstantin Popa, who was actually a little taller than I was, and he had married a Jewish girl, and he was an Israeli citizen. He was also playing as an Israeli citizen for the team. So they had 2 7-footers on a European team at that time, which was pretty rare.
What was the experience like playing in the Israeli basketball league?
Well, playing for Maccabi was amazing. I got to meet some amazing people. Tal Brody was on the team at one point. He's an icon in Israeli basketball, and he took me in. I had dinner with his wife and his family, and he was very, very nice. And I played with some great players over there. I mean, Duran Sheffer was on that team. Oded Katash was on that team. Randy White was on that team, who was drafted by the Mavericks. Buck Johnson was on that team. This is a very good basketball team that I got to play with and learn from. And so it was a real experience. It was exactly what the Bulls said it would be. They said that it would be a real learning experience for me, and that's what it was. I mean, I had a lot of catch up to do. I had to catch up playing on a very big stage with a lot of big players. And so it was a great experience for me. It became a little bit contentious at the end because they wanted me to stay. And I knew that the Bulls had specifically said, you're not staying. And they had arranged for me to go there. So I definitely felt as if my loyalties were with Chicago. And obviously, who's going to turn down the chance to play for the Chicago Bulls? Ever. Right. So ultimately, I did not re-sign. I did not sign a long-term contract with Maccabi. I went back to the summer with Chicago.
So that summer you go back and you work out with Bill Cartwright, who was a coach at the time, and you played summer league with the Bulls that summer.
Yeah, so that was actually what they offered me, which was unique. They said, we can't pay you. You can't be here. We can't work out with you because there's certain rules for our players. But if you want to live in Sacramento, where Bill Cartwright lives, he would like to work out with you this summer. So I moved to Sacramento, and I lived in a hotel, and I worked out with Bill Cartwright, who was coaching the summer league before the summer league. And I met his family. I worked out with him every day. He was great. The greatest thing about Bill was he was a fierce competitor. So we would play 1-on-1, 2-on-2, however he would arrange it, and we would play until he won. So it would be best out of 3, best out of 5, best out of 7, best out of 27. It didn't matter. We would keep playing until he won. I thought, and he is famous for the elbows, which by, best out of 27, you're pretty hurt.
Yeah, it's a
And you're
lot.
taking elbows every time. So, he was a great guy. So then we ended up playing in summer camp together. He was the coach. That was great. And then the Bulls said to me, well, listen, we want you back for rookie camp, which is at the end of the summer. There's roughly a month between now and then. Again, we can't put you up. We can't have you in organized workouts, but we'll give you access to the Birdall Center if you want to live in Chicago. And at that time, I ran out of money again. So I didn't have enough money to stay in a hotel and to work out at the Birdall Center every day. But of course, how could you say no to the people that are, world-class coaching that's right there, world-class facility that's right there, and an opportunity to show that you're dedicated. So I had befriended someone with a tanning salon in the strip mall that was opposite the Birdall Center. So right where the Birdall Center is, there's a strip mall opposite it. There was at that time. There was a gym in it. I knew the people there. And there was a guy who owned a tanning salon that was part of that. And he said, listen, if you want, you can sleep on the floor of my tanning salon. It's right there. You can wake up early in the morning. You can work out all day at the Birdall Center and the gym that's here. And I won't charge you anything, obviously. And that's what I did. So I lived on the floor of a tanning salon for about a month while I worked out at the Birdall Center with whoever was there. And at that time, Steve Kerr was there. He used to do shooting drills with Paxton. And, like every day was just like fantasy camp. Will Perdue used to come in and work out with me every once in a while. I mean, it was just an amazing opportunity that I couldn't pass up. And sleeping on a tanning salon floor seemed a very small of a price to pay.
Totally small price to pay, and you didn't actually have to pay anything, which is even better. What was camp like the second time around?
So the second time around was a mixed bag. So what happened was, I was very excited initially because the Bulls had done all of this for me to sort of work with me over the summer. So I was very excited about the possibility of being that third big man on the team. But then they signed Joe Klein. Now, Joe Klein was a veteran of the NBA, played at a number of teams, was a big 7-foot guy, super strong, nice guy. But the end of my chance that year when he signed. So again, it was sort of the handwriting was on the wall for those that were paying attention that it wasn't going to work out that year. And at the same time, I really had tried very, very hard to push my body because that was the one area that I could be better. Right, I could be bigger and I could be stronger and I could be faster than those. So I worked out very, very hard, and I think that at the end of the day, the injury started to wear because what happened at the end of that. So I made it to the last cut day again, and at the end of that cut day, it was a much different conversation. Phil Jackson had said. Basically what he said to me was that while I might be stronger and faster forward and backwards, I was slower side to side, and that favoring my right leg. And so these guys know better than anyone what they're looking at, and they look projecting down the road, right? They're not looking at me today. They don't need me today. They need me tomorrow. They need me next year and the year after that. And what he said he said, Eric, you're obviously a very bright guy. You can do anything you want. You can have any kind of future you want. You need to start thinking about what kind of future you want to have. And that was a tough conversation. I remember I was with Dante Calabria, who was also cut that day. And we went out drinking after that. And that was a tough realization, but what happened was I went back to Rockford, to the Lightning. That was the Rockford, Illinois, the CBA team. And that coach was very excited to have me. And he said, listen, you're our starting center and this would be great. And, I think we're going to have a very good year and you could get picked up by another team. I mean, not every team is the world championship Chicago Bulls. And, that could very much happen for you this year. But part of the issue was that my leg was hurting and it was hurting worse and worse. And the thing about the CBA, at least at that time, is that it's a small player guard league. So you have to be really, really fast to keep up with these guys. And so what happened was running 3 times a day, 3 practices a day, running at the level that they wanted to, my leg was hurting worse and worse. So I thanked the coach for the opportunity, but I wanted to go back to Johns Hopkins and get my leg looked at because I was concerned that I was going to end up with a permanent injury. And so I left the Lightning to go there. And in the back of my mind, my thought was, well, I could still go to law school. I still had the opportunity to go to law school. So what happened was I took the time and I went to law school. I talked to the physicians at Johns Hopkins. They said, yeah, we could do more surgery. I think I was up to my 10th surgery at that point. And they said we could try to take out some of the bone spurs, which is probably causing you some of the pain, which is causing your limp. But you need to understand that this is a degenerative kind of condition, and you're having a tremendous amount of stress on that hip. And you're too big. There are no molds for your hip. So if you need a total hip replacement, we're going to have to construct something ourselves that's never been done before. So just be aware of that. And that was sort of, the end of the story for me.
You won a gold medal with USA Basketball. Talk about that experience. How did that happen?
Yeah. So what happened was at that point I went to law school. I went to Emory, and I specifically spoke to the dean about the possibility of me playing or going back to playing at some level overseas, because I had played overseas at that point. I still had my Israeli citizenship. It's much easier to play at that style of basketball overseas, where you're practicing once a day, maybe twice a day, not 3 times a day, not running at the same pace. It's generally a slower game. So I thought in the back of my mind that I could do that. So I asked the dean about it, and what he had said was that if I finished all of my core requirements in 2 years instead of 3, I could go back to playing, and I could finish over 6 years. So I would have 4 years to take my electives, and I could take them anywhere that they would accept credit in the world, which was really nice of them. At that time, he said, I'm not aware of anyone ever doing this before, so if you think you can do it, please go ahead. And so that became the plan. And in the meantime, I was asked to play for the U.S. Team, to play in the Maccabiah. I had played in the juniors in the U.S. and won the gold there. So I was asked to try out for the U.S. team, which I did. And we went over to Jerusalem to play. That's the Jewish Olympics, which is every 4 years, and it's held in Israel. It was interesting because I had to play against one of my former coaches. So in the gold medal game, U.S. played Israel, which is a typical matchup for the Maccabiah. Typically, it's a very good game. It's very close. Neither side dominates for sure. And the coach for the other team is the assistant for the Maccabi Tel Aviv, the team that I played for. And so I did get to play. We did win the gold, which was fantastic. Dolph Shays is a famous NBA player who did play and was at that game and came up to me and congratulated me. His son, Danny Shays, who also played in the NBA, also played in that game. And Danny wasn't there, but Dolph was there. And it was a great moment. And I got to see Tal Brody again. It was a unique experience.
So you've played in the NBA, Israel. Where else have you played strictly overseas? Where else?
So overseas, I played in Russia. I've played in China. I've played in Poland and Belgium. And of course, Israel. And Japan. I ended up, my last season I played in Japan for the Hitachi Sun Rockers.
That was
Tokyo. It was a unique experience. Being a 7-foot guy in Tokyo was like being a Siberian tiger who had escaped from the zoo. Photographed everywhere, cars pulling over to the side of the road, people running out with cameras to take a photo because they don't believe that you're real. I slept on 3 beds that were put on the floor next to each other because it was the only way I could fit, was to sleep across the 3 beds. In Tokyo, you don't have cars, you don't drive cars, everyone rides bikes. So the biggest problem that they had was trying to get me a bike that I could ride around it. So I basically, for me, I rode around with what I considered to be a tricycle, and my knees would hit my arms every time I pedaled. But it was the only way you can get to and from the train station.
How did you finish law school then while playing professionally?
Yeah, so as I said, I made the deal with the dean so that he agreed that I could take classes over the summer wherever. I finished my electives in 2 years instead of 3, and then I started playing overseas. And what I did was I took classes. I took some in Fordham when I would go back to New York for the summer, and I would do everything that I could to complete the classes, complete the curriculum. Sometimes that was a little difficult with the scheduling. Sometimes you had to fly in to take exams, which the professors were not very happy about. But for the most part, I was able to do it. I did do it in, I think, 5 years instead of 6. So I certainly finished in time. And then I actually sat for the bar in between playing in South America and playing in Japan. I flew in from South America, studied in a hotel in South America, in Buenos Aires, and then flew in to take the bar exam, the New York, New Jersey bar exam, and then flew back out and played in Tokyo that season.
And how did you find out that you passed the bar?
So I was on a team bus on the way back from Kyoto, where we had played a game, where I got the call that I had passed the bar. I believe my father called me to tell me. I guess he had gotten the mail. And I was so excited. I told the team, and the coach basically said that I was useless to him now. He thought that that I was going to be phoning it in for the rest of the season, which was an interesting moment.
It's an interesting conversation to have.
Yeah.
So now you are a partner in the New York City law firm Heidel, Petone, Murphy, and Bach, firm specializing in a defensive physician in hospitals. Why did you choose that type of law?
Yeah. So my father's a surgeon. My mother's a surgical nurse. I definitely was interested in medicine and might have gone to medical school if I'd gone down a different path. Certainly, you can't go to medical school and play basketball at the same time. That's not the option. Law school, I was lucky enough to get that option with a very friendly dean. So that's why, I was able to accomplish that. I've always loved medicine. So doing what I do, I basically learn medicine every day. And I get to meet with world-renowned experts who defend these cases that I wouldn't otherwise get an experience to talk to and learn from. So it's an amazing experience for me. And I love the format.
So now you're married with 2 children. Are your kids tall? Did they get the height genes?
So they're both tall. They're both tall. They're not me tall. They're definitely not me tall. I don't think they're going to be breaking my record, much to the boys' discouragement. But I think that they're both going to be tall. I think that they're both going to be over 6 feet, which means the girl will definitely have some opportunities that otherwise might not be there. But she's only 7, so she's still interested in unicorns and not so much basketball. Although we do, with the pandemic, have set up a volleyball court in the backyard, which she does like. So the family does play volleyball now.
So there is a little hope for another Jewish phenom, potentially.
A bit. We are definitely hopeful. In the back of when she's not looking, I cross my fingers every day.
Well, Eric, thank you for taking the time to speak with me and the Williams College Sports Information Department. Best to you and your family in these tough times, and stay safe.
Thank you, Sal. You too.